Welcome to The Calm Haunt, a channel where the quietest places often hide the loudest horrors. Sit back, relax, and fall asleep to these true horror house sitting stories. I responded to a Craigslist ad, looking for a house sitter, 1 week, good pay, must like dogs. I was in between jobs and desperate. The owner, a man named Richard, said he was leaving town and needed someone to watch his place and his dog, Max. The house was old, 2 stories, and sat at the end of a long gravel road surrounded by woods. Quiet, isolated. He handed me the keys, a small stack of cash, and a short list of rules. Feed Max twice a day. Keep all windows locked. Do not go into the basement. If Max growls at a wall, ignore him. Leave a light on in every room at night. I laughed when I read that last one. Richard didn't laugh. The first night I did what I was told. Fed Max, locked the windows, turned on all the lights. Still, the house felt dark. At around 2 a.m., Max growled, low and steady, at the wall in the hallway. I stared at the spot he was fixed on. There was nothing there, just a framed photo of a woman and a little boy. His growl didn't stop. His fur stood up. I called his name. He wouldn't move. So I did what the rules said. I ignored him. Eventually, he walked away. The next night, I heard something in the walls. It was faint, like shuffling, scraping, almost like someone dragging their hand along the inside. I thought maybe raccoons or rats. But when I checked the attic, it was empty. No droppings, no smell, just dust and one broken chair. That night I slept with the door locked. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps above my room. Slow, heavy. I didn't check. I just laid there frozen until it stopped. By the 4th day, I was exhausted. I called Richard, told him about the noises. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Has Max barked at the door to the basement yet?" I said no. He replied, "If he does, don't open it. No matter what you hear, just wait. It'll pass." Then he hung up. I stared at the basement door the rest of the day. That night, Max growled at the basement. Then he barked. He paced in front of the door, whining, barking louder. Then I heard it, a knock from the other side, followed by a voice. "Hello? Is someone there?" It sounded like a kid, a little boy. I backed away. The voice got more desperate. "Please, it's dark down here. I can't see." Max growled like an animal ready to kill. My hand was on the doorknob. I was going to open it. And then I remembered what Richard said. No matter what you hear. So I stepped away. I sat on the floor with Max and waited for 3 hours. The voice eventually stopped. The next morning, I called Richard again. I told him what happened. This time, he told me the truth. Years ago, he bought the house from a family who'd vanished without explanation. He didn't believe in ghosts, demons, anything like that, until he heard the voice. It always starts like that. A knock, a kid's voice, pleading. He said he opened the door once, just once, and what came out wasn't a kid, it were a kid's voice. And it still wears them. My last night there, I slept in my car, with Max in the back seat. The lights inside the house flickered all night. I never went back inside. And when I handed Richard the keys the next morning, he didn't ask any questions. He just nodded and said, "Thanks for not opening the door." This isn't a ghost story. No demons, no monsters. But if you've ever stayed alone in someone else's house, you'll understand why I'll never do it again. They were referred to me through my cousin. Good people, live just outside Denver in a quiet neighborhood. No pets, no cameras, just water the plants and bring in the mail. It sounded perfect. Easy money, some peace and quiet. I was wrong. The house was modern, clean, a little too clean, actually. Everything felt staged, like no one really lived there. Closets were empty. The fridge had nothing but bottled water and condiments. No photos, no clutter. But I figured maybe they were just neat freaks, or stage it for security. On the second night, I noticed something strange. All the bedroom doors were closed. Every time I passed them, they were just slightly open. I shut them. Next morning, they were open again. I started hearing noises. Not footsteps or voices, nothing dramatic, just soft, subtle things. Drawers opening, a faint click of a light switch. Water running for no reason, always when I was just on the edge of sleep. I chalked it up to the house settling, maybe faulty plumbing, but on the fourth night, I was brushing my teeth and noticed something chilling. The toothbrush I'd been using wasn't mine. Mine was blue. This one was green. I began noticing other things. A towel left damp in the guest bathroom. I hadn't used it. A coffee mug on the counter that I didn't take out. A chair at the dining table pulled out ever so slightly. It felt like someone else had been in the house, or was still there. I started locking the bedroom door at night. On day 6, I was bringing in the mail when I found a small brown envelope addressed to current occupant. Inside was a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop against my better judgment. It contained one folder, labeled Nights 1 to 3. There were video files, security cam footage, not from outside, from inside, from the hallway, the kitchen, and the bedroom. They weren't grainy or hidden cam footage either. High resolution, clean angles, like someone had set them up very intentionally. And in 2 of the clips, I saw myself sleeping. In the third, I wasn't alone. I immediately called the homeowners. No answer. Then I called my cousin who referred me. She sounded confused. "They don't live there anymore," she said. "That couple moved out a year ago." She was certain. They sold the house after a divorce and left town. She had no idea who I had been talking to. I hung up, and I left. I didn't even pack my bag. I drove straight home, shaking the whole way. I tried to contact the people who hired me. Their number was disconnected. Their email, gone. When I returned with police the next day, the house was empty, unfurnished, stripped clean. Like no one had lived there for months. There were no signs of surveillance equipment. And the USB drive, it was blank. I still wonder who I was house-sitting for. Who filmed me? Who lived there with me? There's nothing supernatural about fear. Sometimes the scariest thing is not knowing who's watching you and why. My name is Jenna. This happened just over 2 years ago. A family friend, Laura, was going out of town for 2 weeks and asked if I could house sit. She had 2 elderly cats and lived alone in a quiet suburb outside of Portland. I was 26 at the time, between jobs, and the offer came with a decent amount of cash. I said yes without hesitation. Her house was cozy, a small 1-story with big windows, a fenced yard, and that peaceful, almost boring kind of neighborhood where nothing ever seems to happen. The first few nights were uneventful. I fed the cats, watered her plants, and spent my evenings reading on the couch. It was honestly relaxing. But then, around day 5, things started to get strange. It started with the back door. I was sure I'd locked it before bed, but the next morning it was cracked open, just an inch or 2, but enough. I checked the lock. It didn't look broken or tampered with, and nothing was missing. I figured maybe I hadn't pulled it shut all the way. I was tired. It happens. That night, I double-checked every door and window before going to bed. Locked, secure. But around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to a sound. It was soft, barely audible, a creak, like a floorboard under pressure. I froze. The cats were both asleep at the foot of the bed, so I knew it wasn't them. I strained my ears. Silence. Then another creak. Closer. in the hallway. I sat up, heart pounding, and grabbed my phone. No messages, no alerts. I didn't hear a door open, no glass shattering, nothing obvious. But that sense of being watched, of something being wrong, was thick in the air. I stayed up the rest of the night, door locked, clutching a kitchen knife I brought into the room. The next morning, I found muddy footprints on the hardwood floor, leading from the back door toward the hallway, then stopping. No more prints, no drag marks, no indication of where they went, like someone came in and vanished. I called the police. They did a full sweep of the property. No sign of forced entry, no fingerprints, no suspicious activity reported by neighbors. One officer suggested it might have been an animal that got in somehow. I knew better. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed up with every light on, sitting in the living room with the knife again. Around 3:15 a.m. it happened. The hallway light flickered, then went dark. Then the sound, a dragging sound, slow, deliberate, coming from the kitchen. I dialed 911 immediately and whispered into the phone. The dispatcher kept me calm, told me to lock myself in a room. I did. I locked the guest bedroom and hid in the closet. I could hear it, movement, footsteps, the soft rustle of something or someone moving just outside the room I was in. It felt like forever. Finally, red and blue lights poured through the windows. I heard yelling, doors opening, officers calling out. They found the back door wide open, but no one was inside. There was no sign of forced entry. Again. But this time there was something else. The attic door was open, and inside, they found a sleeping bag, a bottle of water, candy wrappers, and a small notebook full of scribbled notes. Some of the entries mentioned me by name. Things like, she sleeps in the left room. She checks the doors at 10:30. Wait for 3 a.m. The police believed someone had been living in the attic, watching me, waiting. I left that night and never went back. Laura installed cameras after that. She was horrified, but she hadn't heard or seen anything in all the years she lived there. To this day, they never caught whoever it was. I never believed in anything paranormal or creepy. I'm a rational person, science-minded, detail-oriented. But what happened during a house-sitting job in the fall of 2021 made me question more than just ghosts. It made me question who is really living among us and how long they can stay hidden. My sister Claire and her husband had saved up for years for their first real vacation abroad, a 2-week trip to Spain. Their house was about 45 minutes from where I lived. Quiet suburb, 2 stories, built in the late 90s. Nothing special. The kind of house you drive past 1,000 times and forget immediately. They needed someone to watch their dog, Daisy, and water some plants. Pretty easy work. They offered to pay, but I told them not to bother. I owed them a few favors anyway. I arrived on a Sunday afternoon, got the lay of the land, extra keys, Wi-Fi password, everything. They showed me the guest room where I'd be sleeping, which was directly across from the hallway bathroom. Next to it was the room they used for storage, a weirdly long, narrow room with no windows. Claire joked, "That room gives me the creeps sometimes. I think it used to be a laundry chute or something, but the builders sealed it off." I should have listened more carefully to how she said it. The first night was quiet. Daisy slept curled up near the bed, and I fell asleep watching a documentary. I woke once around 3 a.m. because I thought I heard something like knocking, but it was so faint, I assumed it was a dream. The second night I woke again, this time to an actual sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the wall, the one between the guest room and the storage room. I sat up, fully awake now. The tapping continued, slow, like someone trying to get attention without being obvious. 3 taps, then nothing. I waited 10 seconds, Then tap, tap. Daisy lifted her head and looked toward the same wall, ears twitching. I got up and opened the guest room door. The hallway was empty. The house felt still, almost too still. I stepped into the storage room. It smelled faintly of dust and something else. A little sweet, like rotting fruit, but there was nothing there. Just boxes, old photo albums, and a broken futon. I knocked lightly on the wall. Silence. The next morning I noticed something strange. A faint scuff mark near the base of the wall in the guest room, like someone had scraped furniture against it, but I hadn't moved anything. That night the tapping came back. Same time, 3:04 a.m. Tap, 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 then a pause. Tap, tap. It was patterned, like a message. I tried to record it on my phone, but the audio was fuzzy, barely audible. Still, I played it back over and over. It sounded like it was coming from inside the wall. I told myself maybe it was a raccoon or an animal in the crawl space, something logical, but the next night destroyed that idea. Because this time, it wasn't tapping, it was scratching. Long, slow scratches, moving horizontally behind the wall. Daisy whimpered and hid under the bed. I turned on every light in the house. I opened the storage room, knocked, even checked outside with a flashlight. Nothing. Then I noticed something behind a stack of books near the far corner of the storage room. An air vent. Or what looked like one. It was a small square in the drywall, maybe a foot wide. A metal grate covered it, but it wasn't connected to any duct. I pulled it off easily. Behind it was a hole, not a vent. A tunnel, maybe 2 feet deep, leading into darkness. There were wrappers inside, crumpled candy wrappers, a torn sock, and what looked like an old fast food napkin with something written on it in smeared ink. It said, "Stop tapping, she hears you." I dropped it. My skin felt like it was buzzing. My chest was tight. I backed out of the room, locked the door, and didn't sleep the rest of the night. I called my sister the next morning and asked if there was ever any work done behind that wall. She said no, but she mentioned that once a contractor said the layout of the house was a bit unusual. Something about square footage not quite matching the blueprint. I didn't tell her what I found. Not yet. Instead, I called the non-emergency police line and explained what I'd heard and found. They said they'd send someone out in the afternoon, but before they arrived, I made a terrible mistake. I opened the wall. I had tools in the garage. I used a small saw and carefully cut out a larger piece around the fake vent. Dust poured out, old insulation, cobwebs, and then a space, a hidden cavity, not tall enough to stand, maybe 3 feet wide and 8 feet long. Someone could crawl in and lie down. And inside, a sleeping bag, a bottle of water, crumpled papers, a flashlight, and a disposable camera. Someone had been living in the walls. The police arrived shortly after. I led them straight to it. They took the contents, asked a dozen questions, and searched the entire house. They never found anyone, but the camera was developed. Most of the photos were blurry, random shots of wooden walls, but 3 of them stood out. One was of me, sleeping in the guest room. One was of Daisy staring at the wall, and the last one was a close-up of someone's face, pale, eyes wide, smiling, looking straight into the camera. They never identified the person, no leads, no fingerprints. And the attic, completely empty. But I still wonder, how many nights had they watched me? How long were they there before the tapping started? Sometimes it's not about haunted houses. Sometimes it's about who's already inside. It rained the whole week I stayed there. Not just light drizzle, but real heavy downpours. The kind that makes the windows hum, the gutters overflow, the roads slick and silent. the kind that makes a house feel completely cut off from the world. My name is Lena, and this happened in late September of 2022. I was house sitting for my friend Beth, who lived just outside a tiny mountain town in North Carolina. One of those towns that looks like it was trapped in 1987. 2 stoplights, a post office, and 1 gas station, with the sign always half lit. Beth was visiting her dad out of state and needed someone to watch her 2 cats. I'd just gone through a breakup and figured the solitude would be good for me. I brought books, wine, and all the ingredients to make soup. I was prepared for a quiet, rainy week of healing, but by the 3rd night, the knocking started, and by the 6th, I didn't feel alone anymore. Beth's house was old but well kept, a 1960s single-level cabin-style place with a wraparound porch and a fireplace. She warned me about the basement, said it sometimes made weird groaning noises during storms. The cats, Tuna and Beans, were skittish but sweet. They never left the living room. The first 2 nights were peaceful. I lit candles, played lo-fi jazz, drank too much tea. The sound of rain hitting the roof was kind of perfect. I even slept better than I had in weeks. Then came Wednesday night. I was reading in bed when I heard it. Knock. Just one. Clear, sharp. From the front door. I checked the time, 3:03 a.m. I froze, listening. The house was completely still, except for the rain tapping on the windows. I waited. No second knock, no voice, no sound of movement on the porch. I got up, turned on the porch light. No one there. Just puddles, wind, and trees bending under the rain. I figured it must have been a branch or something falling. I went back to bed. But at the same exact time the next night, not one single knock. This time I stayed in bed. I didn't even breathe. Tuna and Beans both sat upright, staring at the door, completely still, their ears flat. After a minute or 2, I got up again and looked outside. Nothing, no movement, no tracks in the mud, no delivery person, no lights on in any other house nearby. It wasn't until the next morning that I remembered what Beth had said before she left. If you hear knocking late at night, just don't open the door, ever, and whatever you do, don't knock back. At the time, I thought she was joking. Beth had a dark sense of humor, but now I wasn't so sure. I texted her the next day. Hey, you were kidding about the knocking thing, right? No response. That night, I dead-bolted every door. I moved a chair in front of the front entrance. I left the hallway light on. I was on edge all night. 3:03 a.m. Knock. One single deliberate knock. It didn't sound like knuckles. It sounded heavier, like the flat of a hand or a fist. This time I didn't move. I lay in bed and listened. The cats hissed at the same time and bolted under the couch. I was wide awake until sunrise. Beth finally replied later that morning. Her message said, "Don't answer it. I mean it. Just let it knock. It goes away after a while. You're safe as long as you don't interact." I called her immediately. She answered on the second ring, whispering, "Lena, listen to me carefully. It knocks once. That's how it finds you. But it doesn't know you yet. If you answer it, it marks you. If you knock back, it comes inside." I asked her what she meant by it. She didn't respond. Then she hung up. That night, I stayed in the living room with the cats. I didn't sleep. I watched the clock. 3:02, 3:03, knock. This time it came from the back door. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The cats meowed softly and ran behind the fridge. Then something new, a second knock. But not from the door, from the hallway wall, like it was trying different points of entry. I waited hours shaking, every light on in the house. Morning finally came, and that's when I made my mistake. I was standing near the back door, staring at it, trying to see if there was a mark or smudge or anything. And without thinking, Without realizing what I was doing, I knocked once, just to see if the sound matched what I'd heard. It did, perfectly. As soon as I did it, the cats yowled. The porch light flickered. I heard a creak, not from outside, but from the kitchen, inside. And then, footsteps. I didn't move. The footsteps stopped just around the corner. I couldn't see who or what it was. I didn't want to. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry." When I opened them again, nothing there. The light stopped flickering. The cats crawled out cautiously. But something had changed. The house felt off, like it wasn't fully mine anymore. I stayed the last night with headphones on. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I didn't speak. When Beth got back, she hugged me like she knew what had happened, without needing to ask. She told me the knocking started 2 years ago, always when she was alone, always once. She never knocked back. Not until one of her friends, house sitting during the holidays, thought it was just a prank and answered the door. They haven't spoken since. The girl moved away. No forwarding address. Now, whenever I hear a knock, even during the day, I wait and listen, because if it only knocks once, I'll never ever answer it. My name is Ellis. I don't usually tell this story. I've shared pieces with close friends, but even then, it's hard to get through without feeling like I'm losing grip on what's real. This happened in the spring of 2017. I was 29, freelancing from home, and looking for a quiet change of scenery. My cousin Hannah called me out of nowhere. She had just bought a home with her husband, an old Victorian-style farmhouse on 5 acres of land outside of Asheville, North Carolina. They were going to Colorado for 2 weeks and needed someone to watch their dog and keep an eye on the place. I thought it was perfect. Peaceful, isolated, no distractions. They offered to pay, but I told them I just wanted the solitude. I packed a bag, some groceries, and drove up the next afternoon. The house was beautiful. Classic wraparound porch, huge windows, all original wood floors. It sat surrounded by woods with a narrow gravel road leading up to it. No neighbors in sight. Hannah greeted me with a hug, gave me the rundown, Wi-Fi password, where the extra dog food was, and which doors stuck if you didn't push hard enough. Her dog, Wren, was a sweet, sleepy border collie who mostly kept to herself. There was just one thing Hannah said that stuck with me. "Oh, and if you hear anything weird at night, like footsteps or doors creaking, don't worry, this house settles. It's just old." I nodded, not thinking much of it, but by the third night I realized there was a difference between a house settling and a house moving around you. That first night, everything was normal. Wren slept at the foot of my bed. I cracked the window open to let in the cool night air. Somewhere around 2:30 a.m., I woke up. It wasn't a noise that woke me. It was the feeling. You know that sensation when you know you're being watched? I lay still, breathing slow, eyes wide in the dark. Then I heard it. A door creaking open, slowly, down the hall. I sat up and listened. Wren lifted her head, ears perked. Then, she started growling, low, deep, from her chest. I got up, turned on the hallway light. No one there, but the door to the guest bedroom, the one I hadn't opened, was wide open. I closed it, went back to bed, and told myself I imagined it, or maybe I forgot to latch it earlier. But the next night, it happened again. This time, I made sure every door was shut tight before I went to bed. I even put a folded towel at the base of the guest room door, just to be sure. At 2:33 a.m., I woke up. The room was cold, freezing cold, and Wren was whimpering, tail between her legs, staring at the hallway. I sat up and looked out. The guest room door open again. The towel now sitting in the middle of the hallway. The next morning, I found all the kitchen drawers open. Not ransacked, just open, neatly, like someone had walked through, checking what was inside, and left everything slightly ajar. I started feeling watched constantly. I stopped sleeping upstairs and moved to the living room couch. I kept the lights on. Then one night I heard something impossible. Whispers. Faint, overlapping whispers. Like a conversation through a thick wall. I followed them into the hallway. They were coming from the guest bedroom. I stepped inside and the whispers stopped. Then the light flickered, and the room smelled like smoke. Not fire, more like an extinguished match. Burned wood, but the windows were shut. Nothing had been lit. I called Hannah the next day. I asked as calmly as I could, "Did anything weird ever happen there before you bought it?" She paused, then said, "The sellers mentioned something about the original owner. Woman named Evelyn. Lived there for decades. Died in the house, I think. But they said it wasn't anything violent." I didn't know what to say. I thanked her and hung up. That night I woke up at 2:31 a.m. to the sound of footsteps. Upstairs. But I wasn't upstairs. I was still sleeping on the couch. The footsteps moved from one side of the house to the other, then stopped directly above me. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I found a handprint on the living room window. It was on the inside. Too high to be mine. Too long. Like the fingers didn't end where they should have. That was the final straw. I packed my things and left the house 2 days early. I told Hannah that Wren was fine, but I had work calling me back. I didn't tell her that I couldn't shake the feeling that something in that house didn't want me there. Not just ghosts, not just energy, but something awake, something aware. A month later, Hannah called. "You're going to think I'm crazy," she said, "but do you remember that guest room?" She told me she'd been hearing noises too. And 2 days earlier, she found Wren standing in the hallway, growling at the open door. They'd locked it the night before, and now the door won't stay closed. Some houses never forget the people who lived and died inside them, and some don't want new company. My name is Brian. I was 25 when this happened. I've never really talked about it in detail, not because I'm embarrassed, but because when you say, "I saw something in a mirror that wasn't me," people either laugh or walk away. But I know what I saw, and I know what followed me. This was in 2020. My friend Lila had inherited a house from her grandfather, a 2-story craftsman home in a quiet part of western Pennsylvania. The kind of place with forest at the edge of the yard, an overgrown garden, and a driveway full of wet leaves. She got the house for practically nothing, but she wasn't ready to live there yet. Too many memories, she said. She asked me to house sit while she went to stay with her sister out west. She also asked me to keep an eye on the old mirror in the basement. Just make sure it doesn't fall over or get cracked. It was his, and it's important. That was the only thing she emphasized. Not the mail, not the kitchen, not the windows, just the mirror. The house was cozy, but a little odd. No overhead lights, just lamps. Wallpaper that curled at the corners. And the basement? The door was in the kitchen, right next to the fridge. It creaked when you opened it. Wooden stairs that bowed in the middle. A single string pull light that swayed when you walked past it. And there it was, the mirror. Huge, ornate, standing freely on the far wall between two empty shelves. The frame was gold, cracked in places, but the glass was untouched. It was wrong, though. Too tall, too narrow, like it belonged in a church more than a home. When I looked into it, I noticed something strange. The reflection was delayed, just by a fraction of a second. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but the more I looked, the more sure I was. When I raised my hand, the reflection followed just a hair too late. That night, I dreamed of water, standing in it, cold, up to my knees, alone. In the dream, I could see the mirror, floating upright on the surface of the water, but there was no reflection in it, only darkness. By the third day, I started hearing things, always from below me, like footsteps in the basement when I was upstairs, shuffling, like someone walking in socks. I'd go down and check. Nothing moved. Mirror still there, still watching, but the air felt different, like it had weight, like it was holding a breath. Then I started seeing things, not full-on hallucinations, just glimpses. From the corner of my eye, the mirror would ripple, just slightly, like water. And once, just once, I saw something standing in the reflection that wasn't there in the room. It wasn't me. It was facing away, just standing there, in the exact same clothes I was wearing. The night after that, I couldn't sleep. I felt drawn to it. I sat at the top of the stairs watching the light at the bottom. The bulb flickered, once, twice. Then I heard it, a voice, from the basement. Faint, breathy, like it was being whispered through the walls. "Look at me." I slammed the basement door shut. That night, every mirror in the house started reflecting wrong. The bathroom mirror showed a flicker of someone behind me, gone when I turned. My phone's front-facing camera glitched. It showed my face smiling when I wasn't. Then around 3 a.m., I woke up. I was standing at the top of the basement stairs. The door was open, the light was on, and I had no memory of getting out of bed. I closed the door and shoved a chair under the knob. The final night, the house felt angry. The lights wouldn't stay on. The air smelled like mildew and rust. And the mirror, I found it, moved. It was no longer against the wall. It had been dragged, scraped 5 feet forward, across the floor, heavy gouges in the wood where it had been pulled. I went to the top of the stairs, looked down, and saw myself in the mirror, smiling again. But I wasn't smiling. I slammed the door, locked it, packed my things, and left before the sun came up. I never went back. Lila told me months later that she had the mirror removed. She didn't say where it went, but a week after it was gone, she said she started having dreams of water and waking up standing at the top of the basement stairs. Some mirrors don't reflect reality. Some remember things we shouldn't see. And some want to show you something you were never meant to look at. My name is Jordan, and I swear to you, I never used to believe in any of this. Ghosts, spirits, bad energy. I always chalk that stuff up to stress and overactive imagination. But something happened when I was 32 that I still can't explain. And it all started with a house I was supposed to stay in for just 1 week. It belonged to a woman I knew through work. Her name was Mara. She was an executive producer on a documentary I edited, and she lived just outside Seattle in a big 2-story home tucked into a foggy neighborhood near the water. Very minimal, very beautiful. White walls, wood floors, huge windows. She said she'd be away in Iceland for a shoot and asked if I could house sit and feed her cat, Lemon. I said yes. It sounded peaceful. Just one thing, she said before handing me the keys. Don't sleep in the blue room. I laughed. I thought she was joking, but she didn't laugh back. I don't even go in there anymore. You can use either of the other two bedrooms, just not that one. Seriously. I asked why. She hesitated. It just changes people. It gets into your head. I thought it was a weird comment, but I said okay. When I got to the house, everything looked normal, clean, stylish, a little cold, but not in a creepy way. Lemon the cat was shy but affectionate. The blue room was at the end of the hall on the second floor. It wasn't locked. The door was slightly open. I told myself I wasn't going to go in, but you know how curiosity works. Later that evening, I peeked inside. It was small, square, with pale blue walls and a single bed. No sheets, no pictures on the wall. Just a full-length mirror in the corner, and a cracked window that let in the gray evening light. The air in the room felt still, heavier than the rest of the house. Lemon refused to enter. She stopped at the doorway and hissed. That should have been enough for me. But around 1 a.m., after some wine and a few pages of a book, I did the dumbest thing I could have done. I went in, laid down on the bare mattress, and fell asleep. The dream was vivid, like I was awake. I was standing in the blue room, but the walls weren't blue. They were black. The mirror was gone. In its place was a figure, a woman, barefoot, pale. She had her back to me, long black hair, soaked like she'd come in from the rain. I said something, I don't remember what, and she turned. But her face, her eyes were gone. Not empty sockets, just skin, smooth, featureless skin. She raised one hand and pressed it against the wall. Where her hand touched, the blue paint began to peel away. I woke up gasping. It was 3:09 a.m. The walls looked the same, blue, calm, normal. But my hand, it was covered in white dust. I got up and turned on the light. The far wall where she had touched it in the dream had a long scratch in the paint, like something had been scraped downward with a fingernail. I didn't sleep again that night. I moved to the guest room the next night, but I kept hearing things. Soft scratching on the walls, a low hum behind the drywall, whispers from the vent, like radio static forming words I couldn't quite make out. Lemon wouldn't eat. She stayed under the bed, eyes wide and pupils huge. By the fifth night, I started to feel different, dull, disconnected, like I was fading out of my own body. Then I looked in the mirror. Not the one in the blue room, a different one, in the hallway. And for just a moment, my eyes weren't mine. I called Mara. I had to. I told her I'd gone into the room, that I'd slept in it. She didn't yell. She just went silent for a long time. Then she said, "Did she touch you?" I asked, "Who?" "The woman in the mirror, the one with no eyes." I almost dropped the phone. She told me she used to sleep in that room, that she used to have the same dreams. The longer you stay in there, she said, the harder it is to wake up. The room doesn't want you to leave. You become part of it. I asked her why she didn't just have it sealed up. Because you can't close a doorway if you don't know where it leads. That night, I barely slept, but I woke up at 3:09 a.m. in the blue room, even though I had gone to bed in the guest room. The window was open, the mirror was uncovered, and standing in the reflection was me, but not me. It smiled. I didn't. It raised a hand. I didn't. It leaned forward slowly and whispered something. I couldn't hear it, but I understood it. Stay! I ran. I grabbed Lemon and left before the sun came up. I didn't even lock the door. I don't know if that room was haunted or alive or cursed. All I know is I still wake up at exactly 3:09 a.m. And sometimes when I walk past mirrors, I see myself looking back. Just a little too late. My name is Jordan, and I swear to you, I never used to believe in any of this. Ghosts, spirits, bad energy. I always chalk that stuff up to stress and overactive imagination. But something happened when I was 32 that I still can't explain. And it all started with a house I was supposed to stay in for just 1 week. It belonged to a woman I knew through work. Her name was Mara. She was an executive producer on a documentary I edited, and she lived just outside Seattle in a big 2-story home tucked into a foggy neighborhood near the water. Very minimal, very beautiful. White walls, wood floors, huge windows. She said she'd be away in Iceland for a shoot and asked if I could house sit and feed her cat, Lemon. I said yes. It sounded peaceful. Just one thing, she said before handing me the keys. Don't sleep in the blue room. I laughed. I thought she was joking, but she didn't laugh back. I don't even go in there anymore. You can use either of the other 2 bedrooms, just not that one. Seriously. I asked why. She hesitated. It just changes people. It gets into your head. I thought it was a weird comment, but I said okay. When I got to the house, everything looked normal, clean, stylish, a little cold, but not in a creepy way. Lemon the cat was shy but affectionate. The blue room was at the end of the hall on the 2nd floor. It wasn't locked. The door was slightly open. I told myself I wasn't going to go in, but you know how curiosity works. Later that evening, I peeked inside. It was small, square, with pale blue walls and a single bed. No sheets, no pictures on the wall. Just a full-length mirror in the corner, and a cracked window that let in the gray evening light. The air in the room felt still, heavier than the rest of the house. Lemon refused to enter. She stopped at the doorway and hissed. That should have been enough for me. But around 1 a.m., after some wine and a few pages of a book, I did the dumbest thing I could have done. I went in, laid down on the bare mattress, and fell asleep. The dream was vivid, like I was awake. I was standing in the blue room, but the walls weren't blue. They were black. The mirror was gone. In its place was a figure, a woman, barefoot, pale. She had her back to me, long black hair, soaked like she'd come in from the rain. I said something, I don't remember what, and she turned. But her face, her eyes were gone. Not empty sockets, just skin, smooth, featureless skin. She raised one hand and pressed it against the wall. Where her hand touched, the blue paint began to peel away. I woke up gasping. It was 3:09 a.m. The walls looked the same, blue, calm, normal. But my hand, it was covered in white dust. I got up and turned on the light. The far wall where she had touched it in the dream had a long scratch in the paint, like something had been scraped downward with a fingernail. I didn't sleep again that night. I moved to the guest room the next night, but I kept hearing things. Soft scratching on the walls, a low hum behind the drywall, whispers from the vent, like radio static forming words I couldn't quite make out. Lemon wouldn't eat. She stayed under the bed, eyes wide and pupils huge. By the fifth night, I started to feel different, dull, disconnected, like I was fading out of my own body. Then I looked in the mirror. Not the one in the blue room, a different one, in the hallway. And for just a moment, my eyes weren't mine. I called Mara. I had to. I told her I'd gone into the room, that I'd slept in it. She didn't yell. She just went silent for a long time. Then she said, "Did she touch you?" I asked, "Who?" "The woman in the mirror, the one with no eyes." I almost dropped the phone. She told me she used to sleep in that room, that she used to have the same dreams. "The longer you stay in there," she said, "the harder it is to wake up. The room doesn't want you to leave. You become part of it." I asked her why she didn't just have it sealed up. "Because you can't close a doorway if you don't know where it leads." That night, I barely slept. But I woke up at 3:09 a.m. in the blue room, even though I had gone to bed in the guest room. The window was open, the mirror was uncovered, and standing in the reflection was me, but not me. It smiled. I didn't. It raised a hand. I didn't. It leaned forward slowly and whispered something. I couldn't hear it, but I understood it. "Stay." I ran. I grabbed Lemon and left before the sun came up. I didn't even lock the door. I don't know if that room was haunted or alive or cursed. All I know is I still wake up at exactly 3:09 a.m. And sometimes when I walk past mirrors, I see myself looking back. Just a little too late. It was late October, and I had just gotten laid off from my job. A friend of a friend, someone I'd only met once, reached out and asked if I'd be interested in house-sitting her family's cabin in Michigan for a few days. It was way out near Torch Lake, deep in the woods, right on the water. She said they usually only visited in summer but wanted someone to check the pipes, keep the fireplace going, and make sure no animals got in before winter. Honestly, I needed a break. I needed somewhere quiet to clear my head. So I said yes. The house was beautiful. Wood-paneled, stone fireplace, big windows overlooking the lake. The first night was peaceful, cold outside but warm inside. I made tea, sat by the fire, read. No cell reception, but they had a landline and a DVD player. It felt like stepping back in time. Before bed, I found a little binder on the coffee table labeled Cabin Info. Inside were the Wi-Fi instructions, fire safety notes, and a section called Visitor Log. It listed dates, dozens of them, along with initials and brief notes. September 2nd, RM, dock stairs replaced. August 5th, BC, paint touch-up. July 28th, HM, water filter changed. At first, I thought it was a maintenance log, but the entries weren't just about repairs. Some said things like, June 6th, LS, stayed 3 nights, heard footsteps upstairs. May 21st, unknown, front door open when I arrived. March 3rd, no entry. March 4th, no entry. March 5th, left early. That last one made me pause, but I told myself it was nothing. Probably just someone being weird. On the second night, I went to bed around midnight. I woke up around 3:15 a.m., not to a noise, to a light. The porch light was on. I was sure I hadn't turned it on. I checked the switches. Everything was off inside. No motion sensor, according to the binder. I opened the curtain and looked out. Nothing on the porch, but the light stayed on for another 5 minutes, and then clicked off by itself. The next morning, I checked the visitor log again. There was a blank space below the last entry, so I wrote one myself. October 22nd, DK. Porch light turned on by itself, 3:15 a.m., just in case. That night, I locked all doors and windows, closed the heavy curtains, left a fire going low. I fell asleep on the couch with a movie playing. I woke up around 4 a.m. The TV was off, so was the fire. The house was cold. And the front door, unlatched, not wide open, just clicked open, like someone had turned the handle but not stepped inside. I grabbed the poker from the fireplace and checked every room. Nothing. Every window still locked. I shut the door and locked it, double-checked every entrance, and wrote another note in the log. October 23rd, front door was ajar, heard creaking upstairs. No one found. I wasn't sure why I kept writing in the log. Maybe I just needed to convince myself I wasn't imagining things. On the fifth night, I made the mistake of reading through the log from the beginning. The handwriting changed over the years. Some names repeated, but one thing stood out. Every third to fifth entry was eerily similar. Stayed 2 nights, left early. Stayed 1 night, didn't sleep. Stayed 3 nights, thought I saw someone on the dock. Heard someone walk down the hall and stop outside the bedroom. Did not open the door. Then one page was ripped out entirely. Just a torn edge and faint ink marks. Below that was a different kind of entry. The handwriting was larger, shakier, written in red pen. If you're reading this, stop sleeping here. Something knows. It watches, especially if you're alone. That night I didn't sleep. At 2:58 a.m., I heard the back door unlock. There was no mistaking the sound, the slow metallic click of the deadbolt turning. I was frozen on the couch. The door never opened, but it stayed unlocked. I waited until sunrise. When I left that morning, I locked everything, shut the blinds, took a photo of the logbook, and before I closed the front door, I flipped to the last page and added one final line. October 26th, DK, stayed 5 nights, house still active, leaving early, do not return alone. A few months later, I asked the woman who owned the cabin if she'd ever heard anything strange about it. She just smiled and said, "You found the log, didn't you?" I nodded as she said, "It's always more active in October." Then she changed the subject. Some houses are quiet for a reason, not because nothing's there, but because it's waiting. My name is Evan. I had just moved into a quiet neighborhood in the Hudson Valley, trying to get away from the noise of the city. My new place was small, nothing fancy, but the area was peaceful. One of my neighbors, a woman in her late 60s named Mrs. Albrecht, was always kind. She kept to herself mostly, but we exchanged a few chats over the fence. One afternoon, she asked if I'd be willing to house sit for her while she went to visit her sister in Delaware for a week. Just check the mail, feed the fish, keep an eye on the house. I'll pay you. She gave me a tour of the house. It was well kept, but old-fashioned. Creaky floorboards, floral wallpaper, shelves full of old books and ceramic birds. But one door upstairs stood out. It was heavy, dark wood, iron handle, and it was locked. She never mentioned it. The week started quietly. Each day was the same routine. Walk over, feed the goldfish, check the lights, water the plant in the kitchen window. But on the third night, as I was locking up, I heard something strange upstairs. A faint knock. I paused at the base of the staircase, listening. Another knock. Then, a slow tap. Tap. Tap against wood. The sound was coming from the locked room. I called out, "Hello?" No answer, just silence. I left immediately and told myself it was pipes, or maybe the house settling. But the next night, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. The locked door was now slightly open, just a crack, but wide enough to see inside. No light, just blackness. I didn't go in. I didn't even touch the handle. I just backed away and left. That night I had a dream. I was standing outside the door. In the dream, the house was empty. The air was thick and still. I heard breathers from the other side of the door. Slow, wet, wrong. Then it whispered, "You're in the wrong room." I woke up with my heart pounding. I decided I'd do the rest of the week's house sitting during the day only. But on the last night, I walked over one final time just to check the windows, and I found the door wide open. Inside was a chair, a single wooden chair, facing the window. On the chair was an old threadbare coat, and on the floor, a photo. I picked it up. It was a picture of me, standing on Mrs. Albrecht's front porch, taken from inside the house. I never asked her about the room. She never brought it up. The next time I saw her, she smiled and handed me an envelope with payment. "Thank you, Evan," she said. The house appreciated the company. I haven't spoken to her since, and sometimes when I walk past her house, I swear I see the curtain in that room move, even though no one lives there anymore. My name is Sam. I was 27 when this happened, and for the record, I don't scare easily. I've lived in cities my whole life. Noise, strangers, power outages, none of that gets to me. But what happened at my friend's house still keeps me up at night. This was early 2021. A friend of mine, Chris, asked if I could house sit while he visited family in Colorado. He had a 2-story house in a quiet Minneapolis suburb. Modern, clean, fully updated. Smart lights, Alexa speakers, Ring cameras. He said I could stay as long as I wanted, and I could use the guest room upstairs. The first night was fine, but the second night, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification at 2:03 a.m. No missed call, just a new voicemail from an unknown number. I listened to it. It was about 14 seconds of faint static. Then a voice, a slow, raspy, whispering, said, "It's cold up here." I deleted it immediately, thinking it was a prank. But the next night, at the exact same time, I got another voicemail. This one said, "You locked the door this time." I checked all the locks. They were fine. I checked the call logs. Still no number listed. I told myself it was a scam, spoofing, tech glitch. Then I looked at the settings on Chris's smart home system. One of the registered voice devices was labeled attic room. Only there was no attic room, not according to Chris, not according to the floor plan. But when I went into the hallway and looked up, there was a narrow panel in the ceiling, painted the same color as the ceiling, almost invisible. I tried not to think about it, but that night, the voicemail changed. "You shouldn't be here." The voice sounded closer, less like a recording, more like someone in the house. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room until sunrise. Then I decided to investigate the panel. I grabbed a chair, pulled it open. Inside, a tiny crawl space attic, dust, cobwebs, and a phone. An old, cracked burner phone. Battery removed. When I showed Chris after he got back, he went pale. I Didn't put that there. We never figured out how it got on the home system. There were no extra devices registered the next day. The voicemail stopped. But every so often, my phone buzzes at 2:03 a.m., and I don't answer anymore. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Sleep well. This is The Calm Haunt. Good night.